Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. Today, we're going to be talking about the DC books for the week of October 5th, 2021. Kind of a shorter week in a way, fewer books, but there are a couple of anthologies. We have a Halloween special, and then there's a Wonder Woman 100-page giant. There's a few other books that are out this week that are not really mainstream DC stuff that we'll mention that they're coming out, but we're not really going to talk about them in detail. So, Rocky, usually you and I talk about what books that we want to cover, what order we're going to go in. Before we didn't. So I'm going to you pick the order. What are we going to talk about first? We'll go in whatever order you have them in.
Okay, well, why don't we deal with Crush and Lobo first?
All right, fantastic. So I talked about this book last time in as much as it's not a book that I normally would have read had we not been doing these DC spotlights that we've started doing every week. But one of those instances where I'm kind of glad because it did take a little while, maybe 3 issues before I got sucked in, because I've said so many times I'm not really a Lobo guy, wasn't familiar with Crush at all, but I'm really digging on this. So just to give you the creative team really quickly as a reminder, it's written by Mariko Tamaki. The art is by Amin K. Nahalapin. Colors are by Tamara Bonvillain, and letters are by Ariana Mayer. Just to talk about the art at first, I really feel like Amin K has, not that the art was bad to start. I don't want to insinuate that at all. I think the art has been great on this book from the beginning. Well, I'll say good on the book from the beginning, but now is reaching that great level. I feel like his line weights have gotten a little lighter as he's gone on through the series, as he's gotten a better feel for these characters and the storytelling and kind of the tone that Mariko Tamaki is going for with the narrative. So this was fantastic. There's a scene where Crush shows up to this alien woman's house who apparently Lobo's been stooping, and she's kind of sweet and innocent, sort of seeming.
Julia. Her name is Julia.
Yeah, Julia. And, I think there's more to her than meets the eye. She realizes that Lobo's a creep probably, but, the whole thing about the bad guys, girls like to go for the bad guys. But the reason I bring it up is because in the scene where Crush walks into her house, her little kitchen there's all these details. There's bookshelves with knickknacks, there's chandeliers, there's so much detail. And so I think both the line work by Amin K and the colors by Tamara Bonvillain are amazing. This is such a great looking book. And as far as the narrative, yeah, I've gotten kind of sucked in. Rocky was talking about early on where it didn't feel that much like Crush. She was a little too woe is me, a little too emotional and emo. But the last couple of issues, she's really kind of come into her own in terms of acting like what you would expect Lobo's daughter to act like. She's ready to kick some butt. She's mad at her dad, obviously, for trapping her in a prison and using her as a way to escape. And, she's out there trying to track him down. And I'm very much looking forward to the confrontation. So this was a pretty fast-paced story this time around with Crush in pursuit. And it's kind of cool, the interesting little narrative Easter eggs that Mariko Tamaki puts in here she's basically, what Crush is doing is following Lobo cigar butts around the galaxy to follow him. And I thought that was fantastic. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this. Again, it's not like 1-2 issues in. It felt not necessarily like a chore, but just, I wasn't excited to read it. I wasn't, necessarily anticipating or looking forward to reading it. Because again, I just had nothing invested in these characters. And I'm still not much of one for Lobo. Like I'm reading this story for Crush. She's definitely has grown on me as a character, and I'm interested to see where it goes. So yeah, I enjoyed this issue, and I'm enjoying the series. Three more to go, so plenty of time for Mariko Tamaki to take us on a few more twists and turns. What did you think of this week's Crush and Lobo?
My opinions kind of stayed the same. I feel that this is just not for me. I can't imagine having 3 more issues of this of Crush just chasing her dad around. Next issue, they're going to end up in Space Vegas, where Lobo is. I guess I guess it's okay. I mean, people can have fun with it. I'm not really feeling it, but I'm absolutely compelled to agree with you that Marika Tamaki, even though I'm not feeling it, I don't know what it is. I'll fall on my sword for that, but there's definitely a lot going on here. I mean, it is kind of funny. There are moments of humor, following Lobo's cigarette butts around throughout space. Obviously, this isn't any kind of story to be taken seriously. On the one hand, it's premised on a fairly serious topic of her relationship. Crush has a relationship with her girlfriend on Earth. We're taking that seriously, but they're almost like this treasure hunt of her hunting down her father. Her basically, I guess, befriending the warden. She gets out of prison in order to track down her father, and of course he's whooping it up in Space Vegas, and eventually she'll make it there. There's some fun moments here where apparently Crush, space lizards apparently really love Crush. There was a scene here where an alien was sicked his space lizards on Crush, but apparently they love Zarnians, but there's only 2 Zarnians in the universe. At these space lizards, of course, there's only 2 Zarnians in the universe, Crush and Lobo. So what a happy coincidence that being attacked by space lizards, and it happens to be Crush, who's a Zarnian. I find Julia's in love with Lobo. Julia, this red-headed bosom. I mean, this is a very typical bosom, big busted redhead that, of course, Lobo's going to love that. Who any red-blooded Zarnian would love that. Although does Lobo have blood, red blood? I think he's green-blooded. I think, but in any event, there's some fun moments here. There's fun moments. I do think that this is going to get, unless something happens, I would think people are going to get tired of this rather fast. I don't know how this is going to drag on for another 3 issues, quite frankly, but it's going to be her text messaging her girlfriend, Katie, on Earth, who is trying to text her. And anyways, Tamaki's having fun. And I will say this reads a lot more like a young adult fiction, and DC Comics has had a lot more success. In fact, the recent young adult, I think it was Craven and Raven and Beast Boy, their young adult title, has actually got some pretty high sales. It's in the top 20 of Amazon. So DC, I think, is finally starting to get some success on their young adult line. And even though this isn't young adult, this sort of have a young adult sensibility to it. And I can see this sort of, I would almost think that in the future, these types of stories, DC might be better off putting this and maybe converting this to a young adult line, given their increasing success on what appears to be their young adult graphic novelizations. But again, this isn't for me, but I can't, if you're a Crush or Lobo fan, yeah, I suppose, especially if you're a Crush fan. As a Lobo fan, I want a little bit more graphics, a little bit more. I want this to be more Black Label, preferably, but it's not bad if you're a Crush fan.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. All right, what do you want to talk about next?
All right, how about Wonder Woman 80th?
Okay, Wonder Woman 80th. God, it feels like ever since DC went, what was the first one? I guess Action Comics 1000, where they did these anthologies. It's been nonstop. That was followed with DC Comics 1000, and then Wonder Woman 750, and Flash 750, and Green Lantern, 80th anniversary. Now, I feel like we already had a Wonder Woman one. Now we have another one.
I know.
It just they seem never ending, and it was cool to have them once in a while, but now I feel like they're kind of doing the Marvel thing and sort of beating it to death and just using it too often, because I used to like these anthologies, and now when I have to read one to do these DC spotlights, I save it till the absolute end, because it's like, oh man, I have to read another anthology. And so I don't know, I just feel like it's kind of wearing out its welcome a little bit. But this is important, don't get me wrong. Wonder Woman 80th anniversary is a big deal. There's some good stories here. There's some not so good stories. So I'll just run through all the creative teams really quickly. The first one is In Memoriam by Michael W. Conrad and Becky Cloonan, who are the writers in the current Wonder Woman series. Art is by Jim Shung. Colors are by Marcelo Ayalo and Pat Broso on letters. Dreamers by Jordi Belair. Art is by Paulina Gonchaux. colors by Kendall Good, letters by Becca Carey. They are the creative team that's been giving us the Young Wonder Woman backup and the regular Wonder Woman title. So this kind of dovetails in with that. And then Fresh Catch, writer and artist Amy Reeder. Marisa Louise does the colors. Carlos Manguel on letters. Dear Diana from writer Mark Waid. Jose Luis Garcia Lopez on pencils. Joe Prado on inks. Trish Mulvihill on colors. And Clem Robbins on letters. Dated by Tom King as writer. Evan Doc Shaner does the art. Clayton Cowell on letters. Better Angels from Vita Ayala with Isaac Goodheart on art. Jeremy Lawson on colors. And John Workman on letters. Saturn Rising, written by Steve Orlando. Laura Braga on art. Romulo Fajardo Jr. on colors. Becca Carey does the letters on that one. Immortal Mysteries from writer Stephanie Phillips. Marcio Takara on art. Marcelo Mayalo on colors and Rob Lee on letters. And then finally, we finish up with Low Orbit from G. Willow Wilson as the writer, Megan Hetrick as the artist, Marisa Louise on colors, Pat Brosso on letters. And there's pinups in here as well. We have pinups from Nick Robles, Brittany Williams, David Marquez, Gabrielle Piccolo, Nicola Scott, Annette Kwok, Daniel Warren Johnson, Danny, Janina Medeiros. And then there's a bunch of covers. They didn't do the decade covers this time. There's a regular cover by Yannick Paquette and Nathan Fairbairn. And then there's a Golden Age variant from Amy Reeder, a Silver Age variant from Michael Cho, a Bronze Age variant from Travis Moore and Adriana Lucas, Modern Age variant by Cliff Chang, film-inspired variant by Will Murray, television-inspired variant by Kat Staggs, animation-inspired variant by Bruce Timm, and a costume celebration double cover by Jen Bartel. So a lot of creatives worked on this book. And we'll just start with the first story, the In Memoriam by Michael W. Conrad and Becky Cloonan, with art by Jim Chung.
Before you do that, what's your favorite cover? I'm just curious. Do you have a favorite cover?
I don't. Probably the Jen Bartel costume celebration, although none of the covers really jumped out at me as, I didn't order this. I didn't pre-order this. And there's no cover. Yeah, there's no cover where I went, oh, I'm going to buy it because I have to have that cover.
Yeah. Yeah, I just, a quick note, I like Michael Cho's. I like the Silver Age cover by Michael Cho. I quite like that. It just feels different. And it's vibrant and bright. I like it the best. But
yeah, I could see that. I could see that for sure.
Right.
But anyway, let's jump into the first story, the In Memoriam, with the Jim Chung art written by the writing team of Michael W. Conrad and Becky Cloonan. So what I was struck by, so this story is Steve Trevor just got a bunch of his friends together and had a get together at his apartment, and everybody's gone, and Etta Candy's the one there helping stay late. It's almost 3 a.m, and they're kind of cleaning up from the party. And they get to talking, and Steve's like, I want to show you something. And he plays her this documentary about Wonder Woman that he's kind of put together called Immortal Wonder Woman, where it's a bunch of clips and interviews of Wonder Woman through various times, interviews with Lois Lane, speeches she's given at the United Nations, news clips of her, doing heroic things and whatnot. And the insinuation here is that Wonder Woman has died, right? Wonder Woman's missing. And we know from the events at the end of Dark Knight's Death Metal that, yes, as far as the world knew, Wonder Woman died, and everybody, she was just missing, and everybody just assumed that she died. And this is kind of a reminder of that. And then we're told, the last panel of this story, we see Steve's phone there with these notifications from the Daily Planet saying breaking news, multiple Wonder Woman sightings reported. And we get a little teaser that says to be continued in Wonder Woman 780. Now we know that Wonder Woman's been kind of traveling these afterlife mythological realms, what have you, when she, eventually or originally turned down the opportunity to join the Quintessence at the end of Dark Knight Death Metal. And she's been trying to fight her way back to kind of our reality and our portion of the multiverse. But here's the thing, right? And Rocky and I have talked about DC editorial maybe not taking advantage of Wonder Woman being kind of off the stage, so to speak, and having Yara Flor and Nubia, Wonder Woman has not been around. But here's the thing, not only have they not taken advantage of promoting Yara Flor and Nubia enough, in my mind, while Wonder Woman was gone, I personally haven't felt. This is the first story I've read where wait, Wonder Woman's gone in the reality, and we actually see people like commenting on the fact that Wonder Woman is gone, and
Yeah.
people actually miss her. Like when Superman died, and to a lesser extent when Batman died, well, first of all, when Batman's bat was broken and he was gone, and then when Batman died with Batman R.I.P. Like you felt that, right? You felt that in other books, and there were events, and it was a big deal that they were gone. I haven't even really thought about any kind of impact that Wonder Woman being gone in the like DC universe proper has had, because we haven't had any stories like, wait, people actually care that Wonder Woman was gone? Like they actually realized she was gone? I had no idea. But thanks for giving us this story to tell us that, because in like 2 weeks we're getting 780 or Wonder Woman 780 where she's back. So
Yeah.
it felt very like it doesn't fit. Like it felt very incongruous with what current DC kind of reality is. But that being said, I mean, it was a nice enough story to be reminded of the relationship between Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor. And I thought the Jim Chung art was pretty solid. So it's an okay story. It just again reminds me of missed opportunities with Wonder Woman, which kind of bugs me. I mean, I'm not the biggest Wonder Woman cheerleader. I like her as a character. I think she's like, when you compare her to the other big characters at DC, Superman and Batman, and you could even put Harley Quinn in that, in terms of like being explored, and really, I mean, Harley Quinn, I would argue, has been better used, better utilized, better developed, and she's only been around, what, 20, 30 years compared to Wonder Woman. This is her 80th anniversary. Batman and Superman have had like different eras, and not that Wonder Woman hasn't, but such a wealth of rich stories to really examine the different aspects of Superman and Batman, especially Batman, just because we've had so many Batman stories over the years. And Wonder Woman, to me, she still feels like people don't know how to write. They don't know what to do with her. DC itself doesn't know what to do with her. And this just felt like a reminder that Wonder Woman just gets the short end of the stick time and time and time again. So yeah, this story works, but it also works as a reminder that, yeah, Wonder Woman once again is getting the shaft.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What do you think, Rocky?
Well, first of all, I'm just gonna, for those not watching, for those listening to this on the podcast, you're not gonna see what I'm posting on YouTube here, but this is a rant alert, so I'm gonna go on a little bit of a rant. First of all, this is an 80th anniversary of Wonder Woman, and I know we've got a lot of anthologies, but I got to tell you, man, this is the 80th anniversary. Where's Greg Rucka, Gail Simone, John Byrne, James Robinson, who all had significant runs on this character? Now, I realize that maybe they got better things to do, and maybe DC editorial has better things to do, but I felt their absence for this 80th anniversary issue. Steve Orlando. Oh, it's good to see Steve Orlando have a story. J. Willow Wilson. Nice to see Stephanie Phillips get some love here, because we're going to be seeing her Wonder Woman evolution story coming out. But I do think that there was a notable absence of creators and artists and both artists and writers that should have had more of a role in this 80th celebration, to be quite blunt. But so be it. That's just the way it is. Now, to answer your question in regard to the story here, I agree with you 100%. I didn't know Wonder Woman was missing. Now, of course, we knew Wonder Woman was missing, and we knew in theory that the citizens of the DC universe knew that Wonder Woman supposedly died. But we've got that long. We had that 10-issue Wonder Woman arc. We've had 10 or 11 issues of Becky Cloonan and Michael W. Conrad's of Wonder Woman arc, where she starts off in Valhalla and then ends up going to Earth 11 and going off to all kinds of different places, but finally making it back to Earth. This would have been a nice story. I love the art here by was it Steve Chung? Is that his name? The artist?
The artist on the first story, Jim Chung.
Jim Chung, right? Yeah, great artist. Like really good. Like impressive art. I wish we'd have got, frankly, I'd like to see that art on the mainstream Wonder Woman title, to be honest. I really like it. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more I would have liked to have felt Wonder Woman's absence at the end of Death Metal, but even at the end of Death Metal, we kind of knew she was still alive. So none of us really got a chance to mourn Wonder Woman's loss. So if we can't mourn her loss, it's hard to celebrate her return. Something is taken out of that celebration, and unfortunately, that's just the way it is. And I think it was just per story management. I agree with you. I won't beat a dead horse. You said all there is to say about how poorly they've handled, I think, the Wonder Woman coming out of Death Metal. Between Wonder Girl, Wonder Woman title has been very disappointing. Wonder Girl has been disappointing, and I'm hoping Nubia is going to be more exciting, and I'm looking forward to Stephanie Phillips' evolution, and we'll see where that takes us. But this particular story, I think, was it was meh. It got us from point A to point B. Now Wonder Woman's back. I mean, the last panel here, it shows Steve Trevor looking at a note from Diana. Says, if you're still living in DC and I'm away, look to the east in the direction of the mascara. I will be there thinking of you. So I guess this ends with, like, who left Steve the note? I guess Wonder Woman got back and she went to his place and left him a letter. But what doesn't make sense is that the letter says to Steve, if Wonder Woman dropped off this letter for Steve, whereby she tells him that she's still alive, in the letter, it says, if you're still living in D.C. and I'm away. So in the letter, she says, she admits that she doesn't know where Steve lives, yet somebody dropped off the letter. So how did Wonder Woman drop off a letter for Steve if she doesn't know if she still's not sure where he lives? Anyways, I thought it was a little bit confusing, but it ends with there being multiple sightings of Wonder Woman because she's finally returned from her excursions across the multiverse. But I'm glad she's back. Now let's move the character forward.
Yeah, I'm glad she's back too. But again, I just wonder what's going to be the impact of her return when it can't possibly have a huge impact because we haven't even felt that she was gone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, why not? Why didn't you could have put just one page in each of the previous Conrad and Clunan issues with just people lamenting that she's gone. You know, just remind us that even though we're reading stories of her to the real world, she's gone. There's a lot of people that aren't going to pick up this Wonder Woman 80-page giant, and if they make a big deal about her coming back, the people are going to be like, wait, why is it a big deal? Yeah. So I don't know if that's part of the reason for this story. Probably.
Well, not only this story is 26 pages long, or it's 24 pages long. And we got 10 issues of Wonder Woman going off umpteen different adventures. This should have been in the mainstream Wonder Woman title, this particular in memoriam. I think that would have got more attention and at least given the illusion that there's some recognition that she's gone.
Yeah, I agree. I don't have much to say about the second story. Like we mentioned, it's the same creative team that have been doing the Young Wonder Woman, which I feel like is a good story and great for younger readers. We get that version of Wonder Woman meeting Nubia, which is great. Although, again, I guess you can't think about it too much. Like, so Wonder Woman's immortal. The Amazons are immortal, but they grow up, right? Like they do age, which is so interesting to look at something like Stillwater by Chip Zdarsky, where they're immortal and they don't age. So I don't know, kind of interesting. I just thought that dynamic between Nubia, because Nubia is fully grown. They're supposed to be sisters. So anyway, just something I noticed, like, that's an interesting dynamic. So yeah, eventually there'll be more equals, but right now it's Diana sort of looking up to Nubia, and Nubia has to some extent authority over Diana. She's asking, hey, please don't tell my mom I snuck out here to look at the Doom's doorway or what have you. So, but I do feel like it's not that important because what this really is for younger readers, where the continuity is not as important and more self-contained stories. And I feel like this creative team, Jordi Belair and Paulina Gunashau, they really are capturing the right tone to pull in younger fans of Wonder Woman. So I don't necessarily have a problem with it. I'm nitpicking when I complain about the continuity.
I can't complain either. It is beautiful art. It's suited for I think that young adult fiction. The idea, young Diana, basically she rides her pet shark and finds a secret way into Doom's doorway there, which is all just so people know. At the Amazons protect Doom's Doorway from because I forget some evil forces can be released, so they always got to protect it, et cetera, et cetera. And you know, Nubia points out the fact that if a young Diana riding her shark can find a secret entrance into the Doom's Doorway, they probably need to increase their security. And so I chuckled at that a bit. And they just have a conversation about truth. And this is about a young, no matter how old you are, you always got to live your truth and find it. And it might be elusive, but you got to stick to it. So it's kind of a nice little lesson there. It's one that, as longtime Wonder Woman fans, we hear. That's a tropey thing that's been played out again and again. It makes sense that it's going to be for younger readers, and it's young Diana. But I just will point out the fact that that same lesson, by the way, we get far too often in older Wonder Woman tales as well. It's a trope that, it's just, there's a reason why Wonder Woman just never seems to have that stellar story that's ever being told, because they always end up falling back onto the tropes. But in any event, it is only the beginning, as it says at the end, but it wasn't, not for me.
Yeah, and again, I think the other point we should remind everybody is how, like, these are fine and the tone is completely different and it does suit trying to bring in a younger audience, but stop putting these as backups in the regular Wonder Woman book, because again, they're just, it's such a different tone. Just put it out as a graphic novel, in full once a year or whatever you need to do to just have it be its own thing. Or put it out as a digital first.
Yeah.
And then collect it in a graphic novel. Stop. Don't put it in the regular Wonder Woman book. It doesn't work, and then you don't have to charge as much for the regular Wonder Woman book, because it's kind of a stretch for people these days.
Yeah.
Up next, Amy Reeder, writer artist with the fresh catch. This story kind of harkens back to the Golden Age, with Wonder Woman's trapped on this electromagnet because of her bracelets. And then Etta Candy shows up with a bunch of sorority sisters, Beta Lambda sorority sisters / cheerleaders, and they beat up on these like dock workers that have been tormenting and teasing Wonder Woman. So it definitely leans into that whole Golden Age when Wonder Woman was first created, the William Marston bondage kind of stuff. So I think Amy Reeder does a great job of capturing that feel. But this story was not for me. It was cringeworthy in my mind. So I'll leave it at that. What did you think,
Yeah,
Rocky?
It was a lot of fun. I want to give Amy Reeder credit here. She sort of it's kind of a little bit of a Riley Rosmo feel to the art, but it was but I like it. It's very Golden Age. Like, I love the reference to Wonder Woman would always have a mental radio. She actually brought up the mental radio. Wonder Woman used to could mentally communicate with other women through mental radio, which was never fully explained in the Golden Age, but it was a glorified form of telepathy, but they called it mental radio. So it was kind of, I'm funny hearing that. I get images of reading my old. I've got archive editions of the first 4 volumes of Wonder Woman archive editions that it just sort of reminds me of that. This is all about female empowerment, and seeing Etta Candy now. Of course, the current version of Etta Candy is a black woman, and this is the old classic Golden Age, which was the slightly shall we say big boned, lovable, sort of, I guess, blonde Etta Candy, as opposed to the big boned, lovable black Etta Candy that we have now, that we read in the first. So it's pretty good. I like the art. I like the use of the stars as panels on there's a double page layout. The detail in the art's really good. I mean, so this was a lot of fun, and so this is probably, if in terms of, this is what a good tribute for what I expect to see in an 80th, representing that particular Golden Age of Wonder Woman. And I thought this was nicely placed. It was nicely placed, and and it captures the sensibilities of a Golden Age story very well, quite frankly. And so I was actually quite impressed with it. It's actually one of the better Amy Reeder scripted stories, in my view. I wasn't a huge fan of her Amethyst, but I liked what she did here.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the insets of the stars because I thought that worked really well. Also,
Mm-hmm.
all right. Up next, we have what I think is probably my favorite story in the anthology, the one by Mark Waid with Jose Luis Garcia Lopez art. This is the one that feels kind of most like a just a classic Justice League Wonder Woman story to me. And I mean, Jose, Jose Luis Garcia Lopez is an
Yeah,
absolute legend. So
great
in this
artist.
story, Wonder Woman is she's just doing her thing, as a member of the Justice League, and the other members of the Justice League are constantly coming to her and asking her questions, and to the point where she gets tired of it a little bit at the end. And when Superman comes to ask for advice, she kind of snaps at him. I'm not a vending machine that dispenses life's answers, she says. And Superman's kind of taken aback. And so she realizes that she's bit Wonder Woman or Superman's head off, and she flies off on her own. And later in her apartment that night, she holds on to her lasso and she asks it, like, why am I mad about this? Like, why am I in a bad mood? What is the deal? Why is this bothering me so much? And she realizes that if she's honest with herself, the first step is admitting that she wants to stop giving advice, and she realizes that she actually doesn't. Um, she loves the fact that everybody comes to her, and she gets a chance to improve the world without throwing a punch or waving her sword, just by helping out and being there, whether it's for other superheroes or anybody else.
Yeah.
And so it's called Dear Diana is the name of the story, and I thought that more so than any of the other stories, it reminds us of what is so special about Wonder Woman, despite the fact that she's a warrior and she's very formidable and has her superpowers. Um, and I don't know if it's just because she's the I would say most famous female superhero, and that whole identity gets mixed in with being kind of motherly and loving and that kind of thing because she's female. I won't speak to that, but I'll just say it is an aspect of her character, and Mark Waid did an excellent job of reminding us of that here in the story. And then, yeah, like I said, the the JLGL art absolutely fantastic. He does the pencils and the colors because I don't think there's a colorist listed. Oh, I'm sorry, Trish
Yeah.
Mulvihill. Not to
Oh,
shortchange her. She did the colors. She did a great job. Joe
fantastic.
Prado on inks, Clem Robbins on letters. So yeah, this was fantastic. Absolutely loved it. So what were your
Yeah,
thoughts on this, Rocky?
I, I I liked it because this is, for once. I mean, we all know that Wonder Woman. Again, we just finished criticizing, or at least constructively criticizing, a lot of Wonder Woman stories, that they kind of do the cliche tropey thing that, of course, Wonder Woman shows compassion, that she's always good for a speech here and there, supplicating herself, yada yada yada. I actually like Mark Waid's approach here because, you know, there's always a suggestion in a lot of writers will approach Wonder Woman and they'll write her as if it's such a big deal that she's helping people. It's such a big deal that she's up. It's like, well, actually, it's just being there for somebody. The best bit of self-help advice I ever got was, whenever you're feeling down, help somebody. Offer to help somebody. Go help a neighbor, help a brother, help a friend. Just be there for someone. Like, if you're feeling down or depressed, you'd be surprised how helping somebody else makes you feel better. And I kind of like the feel good of this. It's like, Dear Diana. Wonder Woman didn't realize until, I mean, she felt like foolish at the end when she wraps her hands in the strands of the magic lasso, where the truth was revealed to her, like that she, like you said, she wants to help people. If she doesn't want to help them, she can choose not to, but she chooses to because it makes her feel good. Yet at the same time, ironically enough, she could find herself getting frustrated. But that's true of all of us. This is a message for everyone. You don't need to be a Wonder Woman or a Wonder Man to appreciate the message here. It's feel good, and it's well done. And plus, I really like how it shows the team, how the team dynamic of the Justice League. This is a league that knows each other, that talks to each other. They don't hold grudges against each other. They're there for each other. Overall, I mean, this is Mark Waid. This is just a touchstone of Mark Waid that I'm really hoping we get more of this. This is just Mark Waid telling a feel-good story about Wonder Woman. I'm really hoping that, as I'm hoping he's going to have more of a role in the DC universe moving forward. I think that's going to happen. but I hope that's the case because notwithstanding Mark Waid might have somewhat of a checkered past in our real world, but I love him as a writer, and I hope to see more of him moving forward.
Yeah, it's hard to argue that he doesn't absolutely love the DCU and maybe has more institutional knowledge of DC Comics than any writer out there. So to have him on a Superman book or Justice League book sure would be a win in my opinion. But
Yeah,
I
I
guess we'll
agree.
see.
Yeah.
All right, up next we have a story that's set in the '60s by writer Tom King, Evan Doc Shaner on art, Clayton Cowell on letters. And it's Wonder Woman in her kind of mod era where she doesn't necessarily have powers. You know, she's the spy out of costume, and it's Superman and Wonder Woman, well, Clark Kent and Diana Prince, I should say, going out on a date. And the story's, you know, whatever. They act the way you kind of expect them to act, and you know, it doesn't bode well for them to have some kind of long term relationship based on where they are in their lives at this particular time. But what I absolutely loved about the story was the scripting that Tom King did, like the vocabulary, the context of the language and the slang. He
Yeah.
captured the '60s, and you know, Tom King's like my age, right? He was not alive in the '60s. He was born in the '70s, and so he clearly did his research. Um, and it was just fun. It was just so fun to hear Lois and Diana, and to a lesser extent Clark, speak in the kind of the slang or the vernacular of the '60s. Um, I just loved it. I thought it was so fun, and the art by Doc Shaner. I mean, he's got a timeless art style, and
Fantastic.
he uses a little bit less. This style isn't as classically clean as I've seen his art be before, but it suits the story really really well. So yeah, I thought the color work, the choice of vocabulary, the words basically that Tom King is putting in these characters' mouth. this one, this one was a lot of fun. What did you
Yeah,
think, Rocky?
I I agree, and I love the message at the end here because Lois Lane. Basically, the premise is Lois Lane. This is set in the '60s at a time when Lois Lane, in the continuity of this story, clearly does not know that Clark Kent is Superman. Clark Kent is frumpy, he's mild mannered, he's boring, and Lois Lane sort of scoffs, but she's going to set Clark up on a date with a friend of hers named Diana. Of course, we know that's obviously Wonder Woman, and they go out on a date, and obviously Diana and Clark obviously know each other, but they go through the motions. But at some point, even Clark even says to Diana, "Well, maybe we should give it a shot. You know, you never know." And Diana says to him, "Well, that's ridiculous. You know, we're two different people." And Diana says something, and the entire theme of the story can be summed up when Diana says to Clark, and I echo your comments, how Tom King really nails it here. You know, people, Tom King might have his detractors, but the guy is really good at done in one stories at times. You know, I'm reminded of his Batman Annual #2, which was stellar. This is another time where I think his scripting shines through when Diana says, because I think this is an interesting take on Wonder Woman in the '60s. She says, "I'm Paradise Island. I'm the one person who saw paradise and ran away from it. For better or for worse, I'm what the whole new generation is chasing so hard. I'm free." And I just love that. And then Clark says, "Well, what am I?" And of course, well, you're a cop. And that's exactly what Superman is, you know. And the idea that Diana represents that generation, and I think this is applicable even to the modern day. Diana represents human beings that she is so completely at peace with herself. She accepts who she is. She really is free. She doesn't need to live in paradise to have a life of paradise. And that's what she brings forward, and that's her message. And Superman is the cop. Superman is the guy to ensure that we don't get hurt along the way while we're enjoying our freedoms. And I think that simple message in this story is what I got out of it. And I think the dialogue, I think, makes it relatively clear. And I thought it was very well done. This is my favorite story, with the Mark Waid one a close second.
Yeah, fantastic. Up next, Better Angels, Vita Ayala, writer, Isaac Goodheart, art, Jeremy Lawson, colors, John Workman, letters. It's basically a story of Wonder Woman appealing to the better angels of Cheetah We know Cheetah, especially in recent times, is more of an anti-hero as opposed to an outright villain like she was, maybe back in the Golden or Silver Age. So Wonder Woman and Cheetah are fighting. Some innocent bystanders get endangered by some of the damage done to the building. During the fight, Wonder Woman offers herself up to Cheetah, wraps her wrist in her golden lasso, and then where she has to tell the truth, and basically tells Cheetah, "Help me rescue these people, and when they're all safe, I will surrender to you. And you can have me and my lasso to do with what you will." Um, and then in the end, Cheetah allows Wonder Woman to stay free because she basically says, "I wouldn't claim a victory at the expense of children." So it's a story that's a very good example of kind of the complex relationship between Barbara Minerva and Wonder Woman. Um, and I thought the art by Isaac Goodheart was pretty solid. If I had any nitpick, I wish that John Workman, the colorist, had chosen to use more primary colors, because I think it would have worked. That would have allowed the line work to jump off the page a little more.
Mhm.
He uses a muted palette, and it makes everything seem kind of flat. But it still was a pretty solid story. What do you think, Rocky?
Yeah, I a good call there on the colors. Good observation. I felt the same way. The colors didn't pop off the page like some of the previous stories did. I will say this. This is an actual. This story is the perfect embodiment of Wonder Woman's rogues gallery. The cheetah is a perfect embodiment of Wonder Woman's rogues gallery, and it is appropriate that she is in this comic. But not necessarily. I don't necessarily mean that as a compliment, because I always find that one of the criticisms of Wonder Woman's rogues gallery is that all her villains are broken in some way. Whether it's the Cheetah, Silver Swan, Veronica Cale, Genocide, War Master, Paula von Gunther, Ares, Strife, Dr. Psycho, Dr. Poison, all of them are broken in some way, and Wonder Woman always is healing them. And Wonder Woman in true Wonder Woman form, I mean, how many other dynamics in superhero comics do you see the good guy surrender himself and basically say to the bad guy, "Yeah, go ahead and beat me up. I believe that. I don't think you're going to do that. I believe you're going to change your mind and help me save these people." Well, Cheetah does that, but I just find that a little bit tropey, and it's typical Wonder Woman. Don't get me wrong, it's typical Wonder Woman, but it's just too convenient. It's too convenient. All her villains are broken in some way, and as opposed to just plain being, Wonder Woman needs more villains that are just plain badass and aren't going to just back down because children are present or what have you. But I'm a little bit on my soapbox right now. I apologize, but this is actually a perfect example of Wonder Woman's writing and how writers approach Wonder Woman and how they've always approached the Cheetah, and why I've never really been a big fan of the Cheetah, because Cheetah is the villain that just can't make up her mind. Do I want to be good or do I want to be bad? And it's the same tropes every time a writer approaches Cheetah, and I'm just kind of tired of it after a while, to be honest. But I can't fault the writer Vito Ayala. She nails the dynamic between Wonder Woman and Cheetah. But ironically enough, I do think that's one of the dynamics that I think Wonder Woman, to be more popular as a character moving forward, that's something that Wonder Woman has yet to have her year one. She has yet to have her all-star Superman moment, and she's due. It's been a long time, and she's never had it yet. Fingers are crossed we'll have it in the next 80 years at some point.
Yeah, you're definitely calling out something that I think is a problem at DC. It doesn't seem to be so much at Marvel, but DC can't help but at some point turn every one of their heroes or every one of their villains into a hero.
Mm,
They did it with Lex Luthor. They did it with Darkseid, even putting him on the Justice League. It's like,
yeah.
no, sometimes just let a bad guy be a bad guy, unrepentantly so.
That's right.
So yeah, it's annoying at times. Anyway, next story: Saturn Rising. Steve Orlando, Laura Braga on art, Romulo Fajardo Jr. colors, Becca Carey letters. This is the much like the last one, even more so. The the requisite Wonder Woman as an ambassador story, right? So Wonder Woman sitting around talking to Nubia and Hippolyta and Artemis, and they're each talking about this kind of emissary of Saturn that comes to Earth every so often and is a prelude to an invasion, and it's up to the Amazons to stop it. And it happens at a certain time when the planets are aligned or whatever, and they're all talking about now it's going to be Diana's turn for the first time to fight off this invasion. And Diana comes walking into their meal saying, "Actually, you guys got it wrong. The planets aligned last week, and I didn't fight at all. I resolved this conflict by talking." Because it turns out these emissaries that are sent don't really want to fight at all. They're doing it under duress from under orders from this terrible ruler that is subjugating Saturn and the people that live there. And so once again, Wonder Woman finds the peaceful solution through her ambassadorship. And like I said, you have to have a story like this when it comes to Wonder Woman. But because of that, there's no surprises here. Is it well done? Is it a technically good comic? Is the art spectacular? Are the colors good? Yes, on all accounts.
Yeah.
But predictable, yes. And, just at the end of the day, not really anything special, but gorgeous to look at.
I agree. Predictable for sure. Typical Wonder Woman. And again, I think it's tropey, but honest to God, I wish it wasn't tropey. I wish this felt new and fresh, but the story is just, we've seen this so many times. In an 80th anniversary compilation, it's appropriate that it's here because this is literally representative of so many Wonder Woman stories where she's always the one, it's always, I hate to say it, and I'm not, I'm not one to harp on the gender thing and whatever. I get it because that's part of Wonder Woman's mythology. That's part of who she is. But even here, it's like this Saturnette who comes from Saturn. It's not Saturnette's fault. No, it's the evil man who's ruling Saturn, and even Saturna. A male version of Saturnette that initially attacks Wonder Woman. He's not part of the picture. It's always the bad guy. I find very often is defined by gender, and it's often men. And I even find that what I find really funny, and I'm just gonna plant this out there, and then I'll back away from it. But there's a number of stories in here that I never identified it, but when Wonder Woman actually refers to the world as man's world, and it's so funny. I can't believe that more people don't call that out. I think that's so. In this particular world, I can't believe Wonder Woman would how insulting to the majority of women who live on the planet Earth to refer to an entire planet as man's world when the majority of life forms on it are female, and her and the Amazons continue to do so. And I know it's part of their mythology. I get it, but at the same time, it's something that even writers continue to focus on, and it's another way to embrace those tropes. And I've yet to see a writer really take that by the horns and to move the character forward in a meaningful way to truly embrace equality. Because I think in many ways, Wonder Woman does not embrace that to the extent that I think she could. And I mean that in the best possible light. I don't mean that to wrinkle any feathers. I just think that this character is amazing, and she saves and helps so many people. And I think what she brings to the table could be a little bit more equally distributed between the genders, and I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, really, when you're saying man's world, you're talking about broken. It's a broken world, and they always saw men as the harbingers of war and whatnot. So, but yeah. I get what you're saying. The point is, let's move beyond that at this point. Yeah. So I get it. All right, up next we have Immortal Mysteries by writer Stephanie Phillips, Marcio Takara on art, Marcelo Mael on colors, Rob Lee on letters. So Wonder Woman's been around for a long, long time, in case you guys forgot. She's a demigod. So here we have our requisite story to remind us of that, with a professor of humanities and
Professor Barnes is her name. Professor Barnes.
Yeah, and she teaches humanities and archaeology at a university, and so we get a story about Demeter and immortality and godhood and that sort of thing. And so, again, felt like a requisite story that belongs in a Wonder Woman 80th anniversary. So it was fine. Again, I didn't think there was anything special about it. Thought the art was kind of muddy, but Stephanie Phillips, I'm a fan. So the voice of Wonder Woman, the voice of this archaeologist, that all felt very, very true to me. So I didn't mind the story, although, like I said, I feel the art could have been a little bit cleaner. But another one that felt like a requirement to be in here and didn't really do anything new or break any barriers or anything like that. It was just an okay story.
Yeah, I'm going to be a little bit more critical on this one, because this is one where Zeus grants this boyfriend eternal life, but they confuse eternal life with eternal youth. So the boyfriend is granted eternal life, but not eternal youth. So he grows really old, and eventually his body decays and everything else, but he can't die because he's not granted eternal youth. And at the end, I would think it would be an act of mercy for Wonder Woman to finally use her influence or the power of the magic lasso to at least allow him to die, but she doesn't. And even when Demeter was going to destroy this boyfriend who kept alive forever and becoming immortal, it's like a curse of immortality. Wonder Woman takes this creature, or this undead, can't die creature back to Paradise Island so it can live forever. And I'm thinking, how torturous is that? How is that showing mercy and kindness to this? Let this creature die. So I kind of like Wonder Woman. I don't know if you're doing this. I don't know if you're doing this this creature any favors, but I actually I will say this about writer Stephanie Phillips here. She kind of made me think. I thought it was kind of an interesting topic, the difference between eternal life and eternal youth, and how that could. And you mentioned it earlier, Jace, about how isn't it funny how Amazons are immortal, but yet they seem to get to the age of 25 and then they stop aging. So apparently there's an unwritten rule that you can age until you're a young adult and then you stop aging, but nobody really knows the rules of immortality. But it's whatever looks better for on the printed page of comic books apparently. But it's that's why we have to suspend our disbelief when we read these wonderful pulp products. But I had fun with this, and it made me sort of chuckle a little bit at Wonder Woman's choices.
Yeah, I agree, and that is a good point. It might have been more merciful to let the thing die or be destroyed or whatever. So, the last story in here, Low Orbit, G. Willow Wilson, Megan Hetrick. Again, a reminder that Wonder Woman is immortal. Basically, the story's set far in the future when Earth is kind of on its last legs, and there's a few survivors living in a satellite that's orbiting the Earth in low orbit, and there's sort of a disaster on the satellite that causes it to start falling from the sky, and Wonder Woman shows up to help save the day, and people are kind of surprised. Oh, we thought she was a myth, but no, she's still around, and she'll be around for a long time. So one of the better stories. The art was a little bit on the simplistic side, very kind of animation inspired without a lot of detail. And I wonder if a different artistic choice with more detail might have lent a little more feeling of stakes, because although it is pretty big stakes, you never really feel like it's that serious, that these few remnants of humanity that are left are really in danger, just based on the art style. But overall, it was a solid story. I mean, I am a fan of G. Willow Wilson. I think she's very talented. So, yeah, I mean, just a reminder that Wonder Woman's immortal. She's been around for a long time. I think a lot of people forget that.
Yeah, hope springs eternal, and especially when you're immortal. But
Yeah.
I thought the colors here were also a little bit muted, which you sort of hinted at.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Earth isn't blue here, so I don't think it's supposed to be, because it's a destroyed Earth from climate change, and it looks almost more like Mars than it does the planet Earth. And but it's a story of hope, and again, sort of the ones that you'd sort of expect to see on a more of an anthology than this. This is. I would have preferred to see more of a tribute to Wonder Woman in one of the decades. Like going, this seemed to be like a future Wonder Woman, which we're celebrating 80 years. We're not celebrating the next 80 years. So this is the type of story that I would have rejected for this book, because I don't think the story is appropriate. But again, I'm nitpicking, but that's what I'm doing, and I'm reviewing. So, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't have picked this story for this compilation, quite frankly. I don't think it's suitable for it, because it's just not indicative. But again, it is from a thematic point of view, it does focus on hope, and in that regard, it does have a nice message. Yes.
Yeah. Again, I have to. I mean, so ultimately, this ends up being kind of an average anthology for me. Nothing that really stands out. Are there some good stories? Yes, there are some good stories, but this isn't a must read or a must buy. And I go back to something I said at the beginning, talking about just the amount of anthologies DC's putting out right now. Are they running out of? It's hard to. I would. It's hard enough to do a 20-page comic, right? And so oftentimes that people are uh, they're struggling to cut the story down to fit 20 pages. Now you got to cut it down to fit 8 pages or 10 pages or whatever it is that DC decides they're going to give you, whatever amount of real estate. Um, so it's a challenge. And the fact that they're doing more and more of these means we have to have more and more of these shorter stories. And I think it's a challenge. So again, I implore you, DC editorial, cut down on the amount of anthologies, which I sound hypocritical, like we've talked about that in the past. How do you increase sales for, maybe try doing some anthologies? Okay, you've the pendulum swung too far to the other side, in my opinion. So I think they need to dial back on the anthologies a little bit. So
Well, there's another anthology, but I'm not sure. Are we reviewing it? It's called "Are We Afraid of Darkseid?" Are we
yeah,
reviewing that?
we'll talk about it. I don't know if we need to go story by story, unless you
Okay.
think.
Well, we can talk about it now. I guess I don't know if uh
Yeah. So I let me give the credits, and then we'll
okay.
talk we'll talk about it. So, yeah, Are You Afraid of Darkseid? So this is basically DC's Halloween anthology with a bunch of quote unquote horror stories or scary stories, and it's all in the framework of the Teen Titans. The Damian Wayne led Teen Titans are out on a camping trip, and they're sitting around the campfire and telling scary stories, right? So that time honored tradition, and this is the time of year, and blah blah blah. So the framing story, Are You Afraid of Darkseid, is written by Elliot Kalin, who, if you're a longtime listener to the podcast, you'll know that we interviewed him. He's the writer for Maniac of New York, which is a title that we absolutely love here from Aftershock. First 5-issue arc's already out. Second 5-issue arc will be coming out next year. So he does the framing sequence. Mike Norton is the artist. Alan Pasalacqua is the color artist. Simon Bolin does letters. And I know Alan personally, and I have to say, he has my favorite name in all of comics. I just love saying Pasalacqua. Uh, and he's a super fun guy to hang out and drink with. But anyway, uh, the other story, the actual stories the Teen Titans sit around and tell in that framing sequence. We have a Harley Quinn and Darkseid story called Bloody Mary from Kenny Porter, with art by Max Dunbar, colors by Luis Guerrero, and letters by Becca Carey. There's a Batman and Mad Hatter story called Backseat Killer, written by Calvin Casaluca, with art by Rob Guillory, who was the artist from Chew. Luis Guerrero also does the colors on that. Simon Bolin on letters. There's a John Stewart story from Dave Welgaz, who is also an editor at DC in addition to being a writer. The art is by Pablo M. Collar, colors by Will Quintana, and letters by Dave Sharp. There's a Phantom Stranger story called The Endless Staircase, written by Colin Kelly and Jackson Lanzig. Jesus Hervas is the artist. Ava Dela Cruz does colors, and Glenn Robbins on letters. Aquaman and Aqualad in Ogo Pogo, written by Ed Brisson, with art by Christopher Mitten, colors by Tony Avina, letters by Becca Carey. A Wonder Woman and Vixen story called Black Eyed Kids, written by Terry Bloss. Gary Brown is the artist, Marisa Louise on colors, Dave Sharp on letters. And then finally, the last story is Superman and Lois Lane. There's a story by Jeremy Hahn called The Cellar, which has Tony Atkins pencils. Moritat does the inks and colors, and Troy Petrie does the letters. Okay, I am not a fan of Halloween. I never have been a fan of Halloween. Sure, when I was a kid, candy, candy, candy. I love candy as much as the next kid. I would just go out and get candy. But the whole dressing up part and this spooky, scary nonsense, whatever, no, it's never been for me. I've never really been a fan of horror or horror comics. In the last, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, I have become more of a fan of well-written horror comics. I mean, a good written story is a good written story. And certainly a movie that is a suspenseful movie or a thriller can certainly get me interested if it's done well. I'm still not a fan at all of any kind of body horror or gory or slasher films or whatever. It just seems stupid and fake and tropey to me, and it's not a thing. And as much as I've never been a fan of Halloween, it's gotten even worse. Like, this is the year where I feel like I've hit my absolute limit.
Yeah.
Like apparently Halloween last year like filled me up to the top, where I'm at the point where I'd be happy if we just skipped Halloween and the skeletons and the spiders and all the nonsense like all together. If there's a word, like, like the Grinch who stole Christmas, if there's an appropriate word for that as it applies to Halloween, that is me. So that's just my personal thing. I know plenty of people that love Halloween, They love getting dressed up. Well, we have year-round cosplay now, so it's like that shouldn't even necessarily. If you want to dress up, just dress up. It doesn't need to be Halloween, but whatever. That's neither here nor there. There are plenty of people that love Halloween. It's their favorite holiday. I don't begrudge that. Great, Halloween can exist. It's just not for me. And so when I saw this, are you afraid of Darkseid? It's a Halloween anthology. I got to read all these supposedly scary stories. It just wasn't for me. I read them all, and even when I was going through right now and giving all the credits, and I was trying to think, okay, which is my favorite? Which would I recommend somebody read? Which should I like the best? I can't even pick one. Like none of these stories spoke to me. Um, I I guess I thought the art was pretty good in the Jon Stewart story. I also like the art in the Phantom Stranger story. I wanted to like the Phantom Stranger story because he's such an obscure character that doesn't get used that often. Um, so I wanted to like it, but I can't even say that was the one that did it for me. So yeah, this just, I mean, as somebody who's not a Halloween guy at all, I just didn't enjoy this. So if you're not into Halloween at all like me, stay far away from this. You won't like it. I guess if you do like Halloween, maybe it evokes that feeling of fall and scary stories and spookiness or whatever. It's just it is not for me at all. So I guess it was my turn to go on a rant, Rocky.
So
To get this label as being anti-Halloween. It's just I'm not anti-Halloween. I want Halloween to exist because my daughter loves Halloween, and I know there's plenty of other people out there. I just don't want to have to participate in any of it. So anyway, what did you think? Are you a Halloween guy? Do you love Halloween?
I don't mind it. I don't mind Halloween. I'm not generally a big fan of Halloween comic books because I'm not generally a big fan of the compilations. I'm not a big fan of anthologies in general, frankly. But what one of the things that throws me here about the whole name of this compilation, "Are You Afraid of Darkseid?" You know, I actually this kind of treats Darkseid like a joke. And I actually thought that this entire anthology was going to focus on Darkseid, but only one of the stories does, and that's called Bloody Mary, and that's the first one written by Kenny Porter and with really good art by Max Dunbar. It's actually not a bad story. It's basically this character that used to be a member of the with Granny Goodness is there, the female Furies, and ends up getting sucked into like a big box or a boom tube or mother box of some kind, and it really twists her and makes her into this sort of evil creature that the children can call upon when they look in a mirror and say Bloody Mary 3 times, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, and then Bloody Mary appears, and ultimately, Harley Quinn, with the help of Darkseid comes along, uses his Omega beams to empower Harley Quinn's hammer. Harley Quinn smashes one of the shards of glass, the shards of mirror that doesn't have Bloody Mary's reflection on it, and it basically traps Bloody Mary into the Mirror Master universe, where she meets Mirror Master at the end. So, for guys, so just cutting to the chase here, where I think there's 2 stories here that people might want to pay attention to, and maybe this is more of a speculator alert, and that is the Bloody Mary story. I believe this is a first appearance of Bloody Mary, so that might be something worth looking into. It ends a little bit on a cliffhanger because I think Mirror Master is now going to be maybe having a partner with Bloody Mary. It's going to be interesting to see if maybe we'll see her in the pages of the Flash. Who knows? Because Mirror Master is a Rogues Gallery member of Flash's Rogues Gallery. The other story, and you mentioned it, was the story by it's the one with Jon Stewart. And what's interesting about that is that Jon Stewart ends up essentially befriending an entity, saving an entity that, just like him, this entity can create cities out of itself. And this particular entity, it's called Escape from the Dark Fortress. This entity used to be part of a sort of a very evil civilization, and this civilization left this dark fortress but never returned. So this entity that created all these buildings and created this architecture for this ancient civilization that is gone, it now needs a reason to exist. And Jon Stewart, of course, is an architect, and he utilizes this creature at the end to help create a sanctuary for wayward Green Lanterns. And so we might see, so it's possible, I think, that this dark fortress, I'm not sure if this entity even has a name, but this dark fortress is something that we might see in Green Lantern lore. It's writer Dave Welgaz does a good job here of creating this new character, this Dark Fortress that we might see in the pages of Green Lantern. Beyond that, some of the backseat killer story with Batman. It's kind of a funny story. It basically has Mad Hatter. Batman chases down Mad Hatter, and it's kind of funny. Mad Hatter hides in the Batmobile, but Batman doesn't know that. And then this semi-trailer comes out of nowhere and basically long story short, pushes the Batmobile off the road, and it ends up, and then this semi-18-wheeler just disappears into the night, and it's only by being swerved off the road when Batman gets out of the Batmobile that he sees that Mad Hatter was hiding behind him in the Batmobile ready to stab him. And so this ghost semi-truck saved Batman's life, and that's why they call it Backseat Killer. And then it ends up that this semi-trailer crashed many years before, according to Oracle. So it's like, ooh, it's like really scary stuff. But in any event, stories like that, I mean, again, if you're just looking for snapshot stories, it's not bad, but you could probably give it a pass. But if you're diehard on the speculation, yeah, if you're really into comic book speculation, the first appearance of Bloody Mary and the Dark Fortress, it might be some first appearances. You might want to pick this up.
Yeah, I'm still skipping it.
Okay, so the next one we do Batman 114.
Okay, written by writer James Tynion. Jorge Jimenez is the artist. Tomeo Morey on the colors. Clayton Cowell on the letters. This is obviously the next portion of the Fear State event that's going on right now. And there's also a backup story with Clown Hunter. I think this is part 2 or part 3 that's written by Brandon Thomas with art by Jason Howard. Clayton Cowell on letters. Actually, it's part 3 of 3. It's the final part of the backup. So anyway, what do you think of the main story, Rocky?
Well, the main story, it's interesting. It's funny because the last issue we read, it was basically we reviewed the origin of Miracle Molly. Miracle Molly shows up in this issue, and she is actually this issue starts off with Miracle Molly actually talking to Poison Ivy, and she's and Poison Ivy, who is, of course, Poison Ivy has got like her two halves. She's got sort of like her poison part, or I guess her Ivy part, and Poison Ivy she's getting to know Miracle Molly, and Poison Ivy is not a big fan on technology with technology. She doesn't really like technology, but Miracle Molly is getting a little bit. She needs to tinker because Miracle Molly is into tech, and she's figured out. Miracle Molly sort of figures out that how the Scarecrow is likely going to be infecting Gotham, and so Miracle Molly essentially takes off to try to tell. She wants to find Batman to tell Batman, I think I figured out how Scarecrow is doing this to all the people of Gotham City. I was a little bit surprised because I thought sort of Batman already figured it out with the toxin, but Miracle Molly. Writer James Tynion has given Miracle Molly a lot of agency here because he's really portraying her as very intelligent. Some of the questions that I had in the Batman Secret Files Miracle Molly, which I thought was a very interesting scripted story by James Tynion. I think that Miracle Molly is a little bit of a controversial figure, but very interesting in my mind. But she makes it clear here that she talks about a mind machine, sort of how. To try to overcome your trauma, and that these if only everybody could benefit from a mind machine that her Master Wise has to remove the trauma from their lives, so they could see clearly and realize that it's the systems. It's not the people of Gotham's fault that they're misguided. It's the systems that keep us down, the government systems, the corporate systems. It's all this stuff that's keeping us down. And Poison Ivy is really Queen Ivy. This is in her domain. They're in Eden. This is below the streets of Gotham in a place called Eden, created by Queen Ivy. This is her domain, and you got to treat Queen Ivy with respect. And of course, Queen Ivy actually likes Miracle Molly, despite Miracle Molly's obsession with tech. And very clearly, Miracle Molly then figures out what's wrong, and she needs to go find Batman to do it. Meanwhile, the rest of the issue consists of, I mean, I got to say, the art here is really, really good. The rest of the issue consists of Simon Saint. Simon Saint wants to stop Peacemaker. Sean Mahoney, who's Peacemaker 1, is infected with the Scarecrow toxin, and Simon Saint is sent Peacemaker X to take out Peacemaker 1, but hopefully do it without killing him, because Simon Saint doesn't want to lose two good soldiers. And there's some great fight sequences here, beautiful art. Sean Mahoney, Peacekeeper 1, is so badly infected with the Scarecrow fear toxin that him and Peacemaker X basically essentially fight to the death. And despite Batman's best efforts, he can't prevent that fight from creating havoc and ultimately destroying an entire Gotham City block. The art here is just absolute. Again, it's just fantastic. The colors pop off the page. The action sequences are great. You can feel the brutality of the fight between Peacekeeper 1 and Peacekeeper X. And Peacekeeper X doesn't even he respects Sean Mahoney. He doesn't want to kill him. But Simon Saint initially doesn't want to kill him. But then Simon Saint shows his true colors and says, screw it. Kill him if you can't take him out. Simon Saint is worried. He's worried that all the evidence of all the armor is going to be used against him. So when it's clear that Peacekeeper 1 is going to win, and that all these peacekeepers that are on the streets of Gotham, all their armor, it's a lot of evidence that could be used against them, because he's violating the mandate given to him by Mayor Nagano by abusing his power. And so he creates an explosion to destroy all the evidence. And just as he does that near the end, that's when Miracle Molly shows up and tells Batman, I know what Scarecrow is up to. And this is really an adrenaline rush of an issue. Not a heck of a lot of story progression, other than the fact we just finally get to the end of the Peacekeeper 1 and Peacekeeper X fight. Batman's caught in the middle, big explosion, and Miracle Molly shows up and says, I know what the Scarecrow's doing. But I really like this. This is when you get to the part of the trade paperback that is this story, people are going to be loving it, because it's a lot of action packed in this issue.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of action here. I think you covered it pretty well. You mentioned all the things I was going to mention. A lot of agency for Miracle Molly. She's quickly becoming one of the characters that James Tynion has created that I think has maybe even more potential than Ghostmaker. So every time I learn more about Miracle Molly, it makes me like her more and more. So I'm a big fan of her. Love what James Tynion does with her in this issue. Clear that she's brilliant. I would love to see maybe in the future like a Barbara Gordon, whether as Batgirl or as Oracle, team up with Miracle Molly and have them put their brains together to take down some I don't know, Lex Luthor plot or some other genius supervillain. That would be fantastic, because I think she's on that level with Oracle. You're right about Simon Saint as well. When push comes to shove, what did you think was going to happen, Simon Saint? Exactly. None of this is surprising to me. And whenever fascists try to take power and they use violence and force as a means of enforcing their actions, this is what comes of it. This isn't a surprise. So I do like that Tynion is showing us that here. It seems that Simon Saint is a little surprised by this. Oh, dang it! Batman's on the trail. Now we've got to kill Peacekeeper 1 because we can't let that evidence fall into Batman's hands. Like, what? You teamed up with Scarecrow. You created all this militarized force to try to take over Gotham. This is exactly what is going to happen when you do that. These kind of people never learn their lesson for all the genius of Simon Saint. So nice to see him have it backfire on him as expected. So I guess we'll see how that all plays out. Again, I hate to mention it, but I'm going to anyway. Just how much more interesting this story would be, because all along, right, when Peacekeeper 1 and Peacekeeper X are fighting, because we've already read Future State and Sean Mahoney's there, we know who wins this fight between Peacekeeper X and Peacekeeper 1. So again, the fact that Future State exists kind of detracts from the story a little bit in my mind. But overall, a solid issue. I felt it was we've talked about these first couple issues of Batman Fear State as not advancing the story along really quickly, and I've talked about it even to the point of saying, well, could Fear State have been shorter? Could they be doing more? And that portion of Fear State is interesting to me. Like the pace, it almost feels like since Fear State has started, the pacing of these Fear State tie-ins, the individual books, the pacing has slowed down a little bit rather than speeding up, despite the fact that in place of moving the narrative forward quickly, at least we're getting a lot of action and brilliantly drawn by Jorge Jimenez, as you mentioned. So I don't mind it necessarily. Um, as far as the backup story, Brandon Thomas with Clown Hunter here, I guess a positive in a way in terms of, I guess Tim Drake's going to train Clown Hunter now. It's kind of the impression that I get. And we've talked about the fact Clown Hunter hasn't really had any training and certainly needs it. So I guess that's a positive, but I still don't like Clown Hunter, and this still felt really it did this story like I don't still don't understand why this story existed. It
Yeah.
didn't need to in my mind.
Yeah.
Do we need a 3-part backup story to tell us that Tim Drake was going to train Clown Hunter and it's going to
Uh,
be continuing the pages of Batman and Batman Urban Legends? You could have just started telling the story in Batman Urban Legends. Hey, Tim Drake is training Clown Hunter, and we all would have nodded our head and going, "Well, it's about time because he needs it. He's going to get himself killed." So I don't know why we needed this crazy psychedelic story to get there, but apparently somebody at DC thought we did. So whatever.
Yeah, I agree with you on the Clown Hunter backup. First of all, Batman wasn't able to convince Clown Hunter to not kill. Harley Quinn was unable to convince Clown Hunter to not kill. He seemed pretty aggressive and angry toward Punchline in the I think the first issue of the first backup of Clown Hunter. We're in the third. This is the third issue with Clown Hunter as the backup, and now I don't. I think it's out of character for Tim Drake as Red Robin to train. I don't think Tim Drake would want to train this guy. Why? Like, there's nothing about
Well,
him.
he even gives him back his weapon and goes, "Ah, this
I,
isn't what I would use, but here you go. Here's your
yeah,
weapon. Here's your lethal weapon back."
yeah. It's like, and I sort of made this joke before, and I realized I've said before. I know we're talking about the Batman family, and they're all a little bit off their rocker, but like the bar keeps getting lowered and lowered and lowered. I mean, at what point they might as well just hire people right out of Arkham Asylum to be their sidekicks. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, Clown Hunter is this kid is walking PTSD as far as I'm concerned, and he's a murderer. I just don't, you know, I just cannot believe that this feels so forced to me. And I gotta say, like, I'm fairly defensive. I will defend James Tynion's characters. I think he's done a really good job adding all these characters. But this is the first big miss for me with Clown Hunter. I'm just not a fan of Clown Hunter. I think that this is example of a character that should be. I mean, if he dropped dead tomorrow, I just wouldn't care. But I will say this, full disclosure, I hated Jason Todd. I voted to kill that kid off back in the day. I dialed that 1-900 number and I voted to kill him off. And I never started liking Jason Todd until about 5 or 6 years ago. So, who knows? Maybe in 10, 15 years, if I'm still alive, maybe then I'll like Clown Hunter. But I wouldn't bet on it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think Tynan has done an overwhelming job. I like all the characters he's created, or if I don't outright like them, at least I recognize they're a quality character. Like I'm not particularly fond of Punchline, but that's because she feels derivative of Joker to me, and I'm not a Joker guy. But I recognize that she's interesting, she has potential, and I think she's a good character, even though I don't personally like her. Clown Hunter, I think, is just a bad character, and I don't like him. So, but when you create like 20 characters, you're bound to miss on one. So,
Yeah.
again, I'm not no judgment on Tynan. So, all right, what do we have up next?
Well, I think, unless I missed my mark, I think it's Nice House. Oh, no, there's still Swamp Thing, number 8. We'll do that one.
Yeah, Swamp Thing number 8, written by Ram V. As the writer, Mike Perkins on art, Mike Spicer on colors, Aditya Bidikar on letters. I don't really have much to say on this one. I read it. It fleshes out more with Levi Kamel, and that we actually learn about his brother,
Yeah.
Jacob, who's now Hadera, who apparently also got some powers, and apparently they're going to be nemeses of each other. We see the results of what happened to Parasite when he, went out in the swamp and sensed that there was power there to be drained, I guess you'd say, and he's powered up more so than we've ever seen him before, with these kind of thorns poking out of him and mushrooms growing out the side of his legs and whatever. So there's a big battle between him and Swamp Thing. Um, but I don't know. Other than finding out that the brothers are going to be against each other and sort of resolving the Suicide Squad wanting to hunt down Swamp Thing, which that just felt like a big waste in the end. Which I guess it should have, because honestly, when you talk about power level, none of the people on the current Suicide Squad are anywhere near Swamp Thing's power level. So that ended as it should, and then finally at the end we get a little bit of um, the news about the conspiracy and these guys that are after Swamp Thing. Uh, so that to me is the important part of the piece, but we don't know exactly what this shadowy business conspiracy, how it ties into Levi Kamel's family and all that. I guess that's what the last couple of issues are. So it really is strange, because the way story has been structured, it feels like Ram V was definitely setting up a lot of plot threads for kind of the long game, some really long form storytelling, but it's only 10 issues.
Yeah.
So even though I trust Ram V to give us a satisfying conclusion, I think there's going to be a lot of stuff there that could be explored more that may leave Swamp Thing fans wanting. I'm not a Swamp Thing fan, so I'm not personally worried about it, but I'll be curious to see what other Swamp Thing fans think. And the other part of this is, so is Levi Kamel going to remain Swamp Thing after this is over, after these 10 issues, or is Alec Holland going to come back? Like, where are we with that whole thing? Like, is Swamp Thing an important enough character for DC in terms of licensing or whatever? I mean, we know if Clark Kent or Batman, or Clark Kent or Bruce Wayne, rather, they stop being Superman or Batman respectively, eventually they'll return to the role, because those characters and the IP, intellectual property of those characters, is far too valuable in other media and licensing for, toys and soda and shoes and candy and bed sheets and all that. So they're always going to return to status quo. Is Swamp Thing enough of a property that they would want to return Alec Holland? Do people even know that Swamp Thing's alter ego is Alec Holland? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah.
So I'll be curious to see. That has more curiosity for me, what might come after this than the actual end of this story. And that's not because I think that Ram V's not telling a good story. It's just because I'm not really that interested in Swamp Thing. But I will say the Mike Perkins art in this issue, especially the double page title spread, is fantastic. Mike Perkins has given us detailed art from Swamp Thing, even in the future state Swamp Thing. And I feel like now that he's been drawing Swamp Thing for a while, he has an even better understanding of the character, and he draws him even better than he did before. And one other thing that I'll mention about the artwork, I feel like Mike Spicer gave a little bit of a brighter color palette. The greens feel richer to me in this issue than we've had previously with the art he's doing. And man, I really loved it. It looked great seeing the brighter green of Swamp Thing contrasted against the purple of Parasite, who also, I mentioned it before, but that overwrought, kind of overpowered version of Parasite is maybe my favorite and scariest looking version of Parasite I've ever seen. So kudos to the art team all the way around for the line work and the colors. To me, this is the best art we've seen on the Swamp Thing series to date. I guess I had more to say about it than I thought.
Yeah.
What did you think, Rocky?
I really enjoyed this. Levi is the Swamp Thing, and his brother Jacob is this new character called Hedera. And their father when their father died, remember that Levi went worked for Prescott Industries that wanted essentially to buy all this land for their own purposes. And ultimately, this is the the father of Levi and Jacob, who end up becoming arch enemies. They're brothers, but end up becoming arch enemies by the end of this. They represent two opposing forces. One whose Swamp Thing wants to find a middle ground between humanity and nature, just like his father did, because his father forgave Levi before he died. But Jacob can't forgive, and Jacob, you see that in his character of Hedera. He judges humanity harshly, and he thinks that humanity should be destroyed. Meanwhile, they've got the machinations of Amanda Waller, your favorite character, and the Suicide Squad, and essentially they want to poison the forest first by using chemo, and they used Nightmare Nurse last issue to try to recruit Swamp Thing onto their side. That failed, and now Peacemaker tries to attack Swamp Thing, and what I really like about this is that Swamp Thing appeals to Peacemaker, saying, look, this is, how can you can't have peace if somebody's always trying to control you. And the Swamp Thing does something brilliant here that I think is very significant for Suicide Squad readers. The Swamp Thing removes the bomb implanted in Peacemaker's head. And he says, this is what I found. This is what she is using. It is what they use to control you, isn't it? I have taken that power from them. My vines will mimic the electrical impulses of a brainstem. It shows them what they expect to see. So the Swamp Thing did Peacemaker a favor. He says, you truly want to make peace? This is your opportunity. Walk away. And one gets the impression that's exactly what Peacemaker does. And Amanda Waller now will not be aware. Her sensors will be fooled into thinking that there's still a bomb in Peacemaker's head, but there isn't. So that's going to be very interesting to see what Peacemaker does with that moving forward. And so I really like this. I like the connective tissue, and I like the movement of the characters of Levi, of Jacob, of the father. This is a really great. We're 8 issues in here, and I'm really enjoying this, and I'm really curious to see where this is going to go. And I think that my God, we're 8 issues in, and I feel I'm completely satisfied. And if it ended right now, we got a Swamp Thing that has gravitas, this is a good character. I like this character. I really like this Levi, and I like his journey, and I like the concept and the themes of forgiveness and forgiving oneself. And not only do you free yourself, but humanity in the green is what builds up that forgiveness. Just like nature always forgives, because nature always prevails. It doesn't matter how much you poison nature. It just is. Nature always comes back. Nature never judges anybody. Nature simply is. And there's a lesson to be had there that I think Levi, as Swamp Thing, his connection to nature shows him that's kind of what forgiveness is and atonement is. And it's the same message that his father was trying to give him. Unfortunately, the only son that got the message was Levi. It took him a while to get it, but he did finally get the message, and it redeemed him and empowered him as Swamp Thing. Unfortunately, his brother Jacob is exploring the darker side. But overall, I'm quite happy with this series, and this is frankly for this week. This is my second favorite of the week. My favorite is Nice House on the Lake #5, which we'll be reviewing next.
Yeah, did you, before we get to Nice House on the Lake, did you read the Arkham City, The Order? Should we talk about that? I feel like
Yes, I did actually read it. Yes, we can talk about that.
Okay,
I had
let's
assumed that you
talk about it.
hadn't, but I'll bring that
Yeah,
up
no,
right now.
no,
Yeah.
I did, and we'll talk about it briefly. So Arkham City, The Order of the World, Chapter 1, written by Dan Waters. The art is by Danny. Dave Stewart does the colors, Aditya Bidikar and letters. So Danny, she was the artist that did the Miracle Molly last week that I couldn't stand the art. This art is better. It's still a very messy and muddled style, but I feel like it's substantially better than we saw in the Miracle Molly. That being said, I'm still not a fan of it. And this is such a weird type of story. I mean, clearly it ties into current DC continuity because they're talking about how Arkham Asylum is abandoned now because of A-Day, and there's this doctor who worked at Arkham Asylum called Dr. Jocasta Joy, and she's out there working with the Gotham City Police Department trying to catch the inmates of Arkham that in her mind still need help, and they're out there and they don't belong in Blackgate or whatever. She wants to try to help them. So it that all ties in with what happened at the end of or what happened at the beginning of the Joker series or A Day or whatever you want to label it happened in the pages of Batman. So this clearly ties in, but yet it feels so separate in a way, both in terms of what the art looks like and like even the cover when you look at it, it's so different from what you usually see it. Like it looks more than anything, it looks like some kind of video game tie-in, especially because of the
Yeah.
Arkham line of video games. Um, so all that being said, I thought this was an okay story. I think it's not a big surprise that this is coming out this month. Again, it feels like they're trying to go for a little bit of a horror vibe with this art style and this idea of the 10-eyed man out there torturing people and whatnot. So, I thought this was okay. It didn't, uh, you know, I wouldn't recommend it. I don't think you need to pick it up and buy it unless you're a Batman completist or you're a huge fan of Arkham Asylum or you like this art. Because this just felt kind of meh to me. So
But
it didn't feel like anything special.
yeah, it actually reminded me of Grant Morrison's Arkham Asylum graphic novel a little bit. Not as good, but I like the fact that this Dr. Jocasta Joy. I like that the scripting. She very much has sympathy for the patients. She takes her job very very seriously, too seriously in the opinion probably of the one detective that she's commiserating with throughout the issue, who finally gets tired of her and and finally says to her at the end when they come across their third or fourth victim that, look, I have sympathies. I understand you want to help these patients, but these are still crazy people that are hurting and killing people, and enough already. But it's clearly something is going on here, and there's this 10-fingered person, or this 10-eyed person that's got eyes on their fingertips. There's definitely a strong horror element to this, and I like I said, I definitely got those vibes too, that this felt like a video game sort of. It would have an interesting video game feel to it, although admittedly it doesn't necessarily look like a video game. It feels out of continuity. I would never have thought this was in continuity. Uh, sim- well, the only continuity reference is A Day, which, of course, we're dealing with A Day and the fallout from that with the whole fear state and the future state and everything else. Everything sort of bled into that. But, and there's really no Batman here either. It's just this is all Dr. Jocasta Joy, and I actually like this character. I don't remember this character. Is this a new character or is this an old one, Jocasta Joy? Do you know, Jace?
I don't ever remember hearing about her before, so I
Yeah, I
think
I
she's a
don't
new
either.
character, but
I really like her look. I think she looks cool. I love the white streak in her hair. She kind of looks she looks like a 40 something, sort of a sophisticated, intelligent, but sort of kind of a cool looking character. I really like how she's rendered here, and I really like her confidence. I like the I just, I'm I will definitely be looking forward to the next issue on this. I'm really curious as to the story in terms of what's causing this, what's going on behind the scenes here. It's starting off to be an interesting mystery. I hope it I hope it's a well written mystery at the end. I always say that just because a bad mystery is when they don't, the best mysteries are the ones where they give you enough information to figure it out. A badly written comic book mystery is when they don't give you any information, but they just spring an answer on you at the end, and you could never have figured it out even if you read all the issues. So I'm kind of hoping this turns out to be a well written mystery where we can maybe figure it out as we go. But anyways, I think it's worth picking up myself. I really enjoyed this, and artistically, I think this has just sort of a unique look to it. I Yeah, it almost reminds me a little bit like Tim Sale. It's got a Tim Sale kind of feel to it. In
yeah,
parts.
I can see that. I can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, last book. Rocky mentioned it earlier. His favorite book of the week. This is my DC book of the week as well. Nice House on the Lake, #5, from writer James Tynion. Alvaro Martinez Bueno does the art and the cover. Jordy Blair on colors. And World Design does the letters. And we're starting to get some more clues into what's going on in the larger world of the Nice House on the Lake. So it was a good issue. What do you think, Rocky?
Good. I just gotta. Um, Finally, these 10 people that are brought to that were brought to the lake by this. They all had, just a quick summary. All these 10 people had a mutual friend named Walter, and over the last 20 some odd years, this Walter has befriended them at one point or the other and ultimately invited them out to this nice house on the lake. The same weekend that they show up, lo and behold, the world ends, Armageddon. And they can never leave this nice house on the lake, but there's no reason to, because everything they'd ever wanted is supplied to them on this nice house on the lake. But they soon realize that, I mean, they can never really leave. And all the different characters involved here, they finally in this issue, in issue 5, they finally decided to talk to each other and piece together what all of them know, because each one of them knows different secrets about this nice house on the lake. And it's what they piece together is, well, they piece together the mystery of where they're at, because they discover a number of things, because all 10 of them put their heads together and they say, okay, let's, we all know different things. What do we know? And because they figure out that Walter, this alien creature that they thought was their human friend, obviously he's an alien, he could not tell them all the rules. So they're not sure what all the rules were, but they know that every week they can write down on a piece of paper what they need and it'll magically appear for them the next morning. But they can't ask for anything where they can harm themselves or create self-harm. They also can't die. Last issue we had one of the 10, I forget his name. I think it was Ryan. He tried to slit his throat and it heals. So they can't even kill themselves to escape the place. And they assume that Walter is working for probably the alien race that destroyed the planet Earth, but they don't know, but they're assuming that. They also assume that Walter must have saved them for some reason, and that maybe he saved them because they're his friends. They also, finally, one of the members, Sam, in issue 2 or 3, he discovered another house on the lake at another part of the lake, across the lake, and he tells them about that, and it's like, so there's another house on the lake that they would go and visit. Another character, I believe it's Veronica, figured out that the sky is fixed. So when she looks uses the telescope to look in the sky appears to be fixed. So that's interesting. So why is the sky fixed? How come the stars don't move? They always seem to be fixed. That's interesting. And what's fascinating about this is they go and explore the other house on the lake, and it's surrounded by statues. And ultimately, the statues on this other side of the lake, each one of the statues has a symbol because each one of them is individuals. All of them from, you got Nora, Walter, Reg, Veronica, etc. They all have symbols, slightly different circle symbols that represent themselves on particular statues. And they discover that if they touch these symbols and ask a question, that something will happen. And in this case, they all touch the symbols at the same time. And they say, Walter, give us a door, let us into the house. And they end up in this other new house on the lake where they discover another one of their friends. This guy named Reg, he's actually waiting for them in this other house. And it's quite interesting because Reg tells them that apparently there's a way to still save the Earth. And that's very interesting because if the Earth isn't really, if there's still a way to save the Earth, because we were all led to believe that the Earth is completely destroyed. When they watched TV and it appeared as if the entire planet was destroyed, except for this nice house on the lake. How can the Earth still be alive? Does it have something to do with time travel? I'm speculating because the sky is fixed. Maybe they're caught in a time loop. Why is Walter so fascinated with them? Why does Walter want to preserve them? What's Walter's true agenda? Is there another alien race involved? I don't know, but I'm really finding that all these questions that I'm really curious to know what the answer is. And James Tynion has done a great job here, really whetting my appetite. And the art is really fantastic. The double page spreads are just absolutely, I love the double page spreads. I love the suspense. I really love he's just a master at the horror genre, which is funny because I between this and Something is Killing the Children, that especially that first 15 issues of Something is Killing the Children is just a master craft of horror storytelling. And this here is just impressing me to no end. And this is only at issue 5. I believe we have one more issue and then it goes on hiatus for a while. But this is definitely one where I'll be picking up in trade, and I'm hoping if it comes out in hardcover form, I'll be picking that up as well. So this is definitely a must buy. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm hoping for some kind of director's cut. I'd love to have Tynan's explanation into these things because it is obviously it's building on the mystery and the strength of the series, despite the fact that he drops these little bombshells like Reg and being discovered as another character in this other nice house on the lake across the way, and then Reg himself drops the bombshell that they may be able to still save the world. That's all great. Like I love when Tynan does that. But the strength of the series, because you can't have every panel and every page have a big reveal like that. The strength of the series and what keeps it going, the backbone of the series, I guess you'd say, is the relationships and the interactions between these characters, because only some of them are close friends. Like maybe person A is close friends with person B, and person B is close friends with person C, but person A and person C aren't close. They barely know each other, right? It's all about that interconnectivity and being thrown into this extraordinary situation. So I love the reveal that there was another nice house on the lake. I love the scenes of them trying to break into it, trying to an automatic weapon, using explosives, and then, finding that they all had to work together to get it open by touching their statues at the same time. But then the other part of my brain is trying to figure out, like you were talking about earlier, Rocky, about mystery stories and were all the clues there to kind of figure it out beforehand or not.
Yeah.
So I can't help but kind of speculate on what may be. You wonder if the powers that be, the whatever the alien race or whatever it is that gave Walter his powers and sent him to Earth all those years ago to choose 11, 12 people, whatever it is, to survive this. What do they know and what do they not know? Because the inhabitants of the nice house on the lake even talk amongst themselves. I think you mentioned it, saying, well, he hasn't outright told us the rules, like the way everything works. Maybe because he's not allowed to. So they're trying to figure things out on their own, the way things work. Now, being that this other house was so hard to get into, could it be that Walter, what he put inside the house, what the knowledge that Reg has, and Reg being there himself, maybe the reason that house was so hard to get into is because that Reg was hidden away from Walter's compatriots or comrades or rulers or who's ever making Walter do what Walter needs to do. So Walter, through his time on Earth, and he mentions it himself in this story, when he first meets Reg, because he's friends with Veronica, and he first meets Reg, and he doesn't want to he's friends with Reg, and then he meets Veronica. He doesn't want to be friends with Veronica because he's meeting too many people basically on Earth that he likes. And if he chooses to save Veronica, like, where does it end? Like, he's only allowed to save so many people, but every time he meets somebody new, if he allows himself, he befriends that person. And at some point he has to draw the line. He can't save, otherwise he's just saving all of humanity, all of the entire human race crowded into the nice house on the lake. He can't do that. Yeah. So he's in a way, he's kind of being assimilated into the human race and into society. And so could it be that he decided to rebel against his orders or defy his orders? How can I do that? Well, I'm going to create the second nice house on the lake, and I'm going to give Reg the knowledge of how to save the planet, save the human race, and I'm going to hide him in that nice house on the lake when whatever needs to go down goes down, and then I'll leave it up to the people that are in the nice house on the lake to save the day, because then maybe he doesn't get blamed for it, right? I didn't do it. The people at the nice house on the lake figured it out. So again, that's just my, the rocks in my head rolling around trying to make sense of what's going on. But
well, it's interesting.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, it's interesting that Walter said he never expected to like everybody so much. There was everybody knew that he met, he liked, and he was he knew that he only had it's clear that he could only save so many, and it was,
Right.
and it is clear that this issue hints that he was closest to Reg, and so Reg might be the one. It's not surprising that Reg knows a secret about maybe being able to still save the planet, because it's expressly stated at the beginning that Reg was closest to Walter, and that's interesting. So what is Reg? What does Reg know that the rest of them don't? So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens next issue.
Yeah, and it just shows the power of this story, that it's one of those stories that's so good you're thinking about it while you're in the shower or driving to work or riding the subway or whatever. You're trying to figure it out because it's so engaging and so engrossing and compelling, the world that Tynan and Martinez Bueno and Jordi Belair and everybody have created. So yeah, my favorite issue this week by far. That was the last thing I expected when they got the second house open, was to see Reg come walking out. So yeah, big fan. So in addition to these books, this week there's a couple of other horror titles. DC Horror presents The Conjuring, The Lover, #5, which continues that or finishes off that story. Actually, there's a new one starting. DC Horror presents Soul Plumber, that has a first issue. There's also Justice League Infinity #4, which is the continuation of the Justice League cartoon. There's Batman the Adventures Continue Season 2, which is based on Batman the Animated Series. So there's some other DC titles that are coming out this week. And then in terms of collected editions, we have a few as well. We've got there's a Deathstroke omnibus that collects the Christopher Priest run of Deathstroke in its entirety. There's Batman Curse of the White Knight trade paperback. That's the Sean Gordon Murphy verse. There's a sensational Wonder Woman trade paperback that collects, if I can get that word out, that collects the sensational Wonder Woman digital comic that Stephanie Phillips wrote. So there's a few other titles in addition to what we talked about today. So yeah, I think Rocky and I, we both picked Nice House on the Lake for our favorite. But I guess if I was to choose my least favorite DC book of the week, and it's not even because it's terrible, but it's just, again, going back to my Grinch of Halloween, like that Are You Afraid of Darkseid it was tough to get through that for me.
Yeah.
So definitely not my favorite.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. Well, there is one I enjoyed. Nice House on the Lake was my favorite. My least favorite, I would probably, well, we didn't review it, but no, I would probably say Are You Afraid of Darkseid was probably my least favorite. But I didn't mind the Bloody Mary story. I think she might be an interesting addition to the Rogues Gallery of some DC hero out there. I'm guessing probably the Flash, since she's going to be pairing up with Mirror Master, I think. So all in all, we've had worse weeks, we've had better.
Yep, exactly. And I'm still crazy busy at work. I say this every time. I'm really planning on trying to get back to some of the other episodes that we do, like the Marvel chronology and whatnot. But we'll see if I can make that happen sometime soon. You have anything else coming out this week, Rocky, that you want to tease?
No, I got too many trials coming up, so I got I'll be working tonight even before I go to bed. So
yeah,
I'm
right
too
there
busy.
with me, the slave of the day job. So just a reminder, everybody, be sure if you're listening to us audio only to head over to YouTube, look for the Comic Boom YouTube channel, give it a subscription. Make sure to like this video, ring that notification bell so you know when Rocky has new content coming out. Conversely, if you're watching us on YouTube and you're curious about the Comic Source podcast and the other content that we have in the library, there's thousands of episodes you can go back and listen to, comic reviews and interviews and all that kind of stuff. So just do a search for the Comic Source on whatever your favorite podcast platform is. We're on all of them. Or you can even do a search through your podcast app on your smart device. Just do a search for the Comic Source and you'll find us. So once again, Rocky and I appreciate everybody joining. Hope you all had a good time, and we will talk to you next time.
See you later.